Stardust promises. The red dust of Proxima Colony swirled around Ilara Voss as he tightened the last bolt on the community's water filtration system. His weathered hands, stained with engine grease, reflected 8 years of desperate maintenance keeping the failing colony equipment running. "Dad! Dad!" Nova's voice cut through the howling wind. At 7 years old, she was already showing an aptitude for mechanics that made Ilara's heart swell with pride. "Over here, Starlight," he called, wiping sweat from his brow. The dual suns of Proxima beat down mercilessly, another sign the environmental shields were failing. Nova skidded to a stop beside him, her dark curls bouncing wildly. "Ms. Tella says school's closing early today. The air filters broke again." Ilara sighed, pocketing his wrench. Another system failing. The colony was dying, and everyone knew it. 3 years of crop failures, deteriorating infrastructure, and the mining company's abandonment had left them all struggling to survive. "We'll fix it tomorrow," he said, knowing it was another patch job at best. "Let's get you home." Their modest dwelling sat on the colony's edge, offering a view of the vast red desert, and beyond it, the spaceport where occasional ships still landed. As they approached, Ilara noticed an unfamiliar vessel docked, sleek and clearly well-maintained, unlike the usual cargo haulers. Inside their home, Nova immediately went to her small collection of spaceship models, gifts from her mother before she died during a supply run accident 4 years ago. "I saw a real Sunfire-class cruiser at the port today, Dad," she exclaimed, holding up a similar model. "It was beautiful." A knock at their door interrupted them. Ilara opened it to find a woman he didn't recognize, tall with amber eyes and skin the color of burnished copper. Her uniform bore insignia he hadn't seen before. "Ilara Voss?" she asked, her voice carrying an accent from the inner systems. "That's me, Commander Lyra Nassim of the independent starship Celestial Voyager." She extended her hand. "I'm told you're the best engineer in this sector." Ilara shook her hand, noting her firm grip. "Someone's exaggerating." "What can I help you with, Commander?" "May I come in? I have a proposition that might interest you." He hesitated, then stepped aside. Nova watched with wide eyes as the commander entered. "Hello there," Lyra said, kneeling to Nova's level. "That's a Sunfire class you're holding." "Good taste," Nova beamed. "My mom gave it to me. There's one at the port right now." "That would be mine," Lyra said with a smile. "Modified, of course." While Nova excitedly showed her collection, Lyra explained her visit to Ilara. "I need a co-pilot and engineer. My last one retired at Centauri Station. Your name came up repeatedly when I asked around." Ilara frowned. "I haven't left Proxima in years. I have responsibilities here." "Including your daughter," Lyra noted. "I understand. But Ilara, word's spreading about Proxima's condition. This colony has maybe a year left before complete system failure." Her words struck him like a physical blow. He'd known, but hearing it stated so plainly. "My ship needs a co-pilot," she continued, watching Nova. "And that little girl needs a future. I'm offering both of you passage, quarters, and a share of our trading profits. The Voyager has excellent education modules, and we visit the most advanced stations in 3 systems." Later that night, after Lyra left with her offer still open, Ilara stood watching Nova sleep. On her wall hung a star chart where she'd marked places she dreamed of visiting, dreams that would die with Proxima Colony. The next morning, as another dust storm raged outside, Ilara made his decision. He packed their few belongings while Nova bounced excitedly around him. At the spaceport, Lyra waited at the Voyager's ramp. When she saw them approaching, her face broke into a smile that made Ilara's heart skip unexpectedly. "Welcome aboard," she said, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that suggested this was more than a business arrangement. "Both of you," as Nova ran ahead into the ship. Lyra's hand briefly touched Ilara's. "New beginnings," she murmured. The ramp closed behind them, sealing away the dying world of Proxima Colony as they prepared to journey into the stars and into an uncertain future together. Void Crossing. The Celestial Voyager hummed beneath Ilara's feet as he monitored the engine output from the co-pilot's chair. 3 weeks had passed since they'd left Proxima Colony behind, and he was still adjusting to the rhythm of starship life. Engine efficiency up 12% since your modifications, Lyra noted from the captain's seat, her amber eyes scanning the readouts. I'm impressed. Alara allowed himself a small smile. The compression coils were misaligned. Easy fix. Easy for you, perhaps. Her gaze lingered on him longer than necessary. Most engineers would have missed it entirely. The ship's main corridor bustled with activity as the diverse crew prepared for their approach to the Helion asteroid belt, a notorious navigational challenge but a necessary shortcut to their destination. Nova had adapted to life aboard with remarkable ease. Currently, she sat cross-legged in the ship's common area surrounded by holographic displays as the ship's AI, which she'd nicknamed Spark, taught her stellar cartography. Your trajectory calculation is correct. Nova, Spark's pleasant voice affirmed. You've identified the optimal path through the Cygnus Nebula. It's way easier than the math problems we had on Proxima, Nova replied, beaming. At her side sat Teo, the ship's botanist, a gentle soul with intricate markings across his temples, characteristic of his home world. She's a natural navigator, Teo told Ilara when he passed by. Maybe she'll captain her own vessel someday. Lyra appeared beside Ilara, standing close enough that he could detect the faint scent of starflower in her hair. Your daughter has charmed the entire crew, even Ravi, and he's notoriously difficult to impress. Ravi, the ship's security chief, was currently teaching Nova how to play stellar chess in his off-duty hours, something Ilara had never seen him do with anyone else. She's resilient, Ilara said softly, like her mother. He rarely spoke of Mira, but something about Lyra made it easier. Tell me about her, Lyra said as they walked toward the observation deck. The observation deck offered a panoramic view of space, currently displaying the approaching asteroid belt, a chaotic dance of rock and ice fragments spanning thousands of kilometers. Mira was a navigator, brilliant with spatial calculations. Nova gets that from her. Ilara leaned against the railing. When the colony's supplies ran critical 4 years ago, she volunteered for a dangerous supply run. Her shuttle. There was a solar flare. Communications and navigation went down. Lyra's hand covered his on the railing. I'm sorry. The ship's alarm suddenly blared, interrupting the moment. Captain to the bridge, Spark announced. Unidentified vessel detected on intercept course. They rushed to the bridge where the view screen displayed a battered mining vessel cutting across their path. Pirates, Ravi growled. They use old mining ships as cover. They'll try to force us to stop, claim they need assistance, then board. Options? Lyra asked, sliding into her chair. Ilara studied the tactical display. The asteroid belt. We can use it as cover if we enter here. He pointed to a particularly dense cluster. Their ship is too bulky to follow safely. Lyra's eyes met his. That's a dangerous route. I can navigate it, Ilara said with confidence. Trust me. After a moment's hesitation, Lyra nodded. Take the helm. Ilara's hands flew over the controls as the Voyager accelerated toward the asteroid field. The pirate vessel pursued, firing warning shots that dissipated against their shields. Nova, Ilara called through the comm. Secure yourself in your quarters. Now. The ship shuddered as Ilara guided it between massive asteroids, some larger than the vessel itself. The pirate ship followed but kept greater distance, unwilling to risk the tighter maneuvers Ilara executed. Port thruster at 60%, Lyra reported, tension in her voice. Compensating, Ilara replied, adjusting their course with precision. The Voyager spun gracefully between two colliding asteroids just as they impacted, creating a debris field behind them. The pursuing ship couldn't react in time. A large fragment struck its port side, sending it spinning away, its pursuit abandoned. Cheers erupted on the bridge as Ilara navigated them safely through the remainder of the belt and into open space. Lyra's hand squeezed his shoulder. That was exceptional flying, she said, her voice low and intimate. Later, after Nova had been tucked in and the ship was on autopilot, Ilara found Lyra in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Thank you, she said without turning. You protected my ship, my crew. Our ship now, isn't it? Alara replied, moving to stand beside her. When she turned to face him, the starlight caught in her eyes. Yes, she whispered. Ours. The distance between them seemed to vanish as Lyra leaned forward, her lips meeting his in a tentative kiss that quickly deepened. His hands found her waist as hers slid around his neck. When they finally separated, breathless, Lyra rested her forehead against his. I wasn't looking for this when I recruited you, she murmured. Neither was I, Ilara admitted. But I'm not sorry. A comfortable silence settled between them as they gazed out at the endless expanse of stars, the Voyager carrying them toward unknown adventures, and perhaps something even more valuable, a second chance at belonging. In her quarters, Nova slept peacefully, surrounded by her model ships and new treasures collected from the Voyager's journey. On her view screen, a star map glowed softly, marking their path forward, into the vast unknown that now, remarkably, felt like home. Stellar shadows, anomalous signal detected, Spark announced, the AI's voice echoing through the bridge of the celestial Voyager. Ilara looked up from the engine diagnostic he was running, meeting Lyra's questioning gaze across the command center. 2 months into their journey together, they had developed an unspoken communication that the crew had quickly noticed but tactfully avoided mentioning. Origin? Lyra asked, moving to the central console where a holographic display showed their position relative to nearby systems. Unknown, Spark replied. Signal pattern doesn't match any registered communication protocols. Originating from coordinates 47-2391, an uncharted sector beyond Vega's reach. Ravi frowned, his security training evident in his posture. Could be a trap. Pirates have been using new tactics since the Trade Authority increased patrols. Lyra turned to Alara, her captain's demeanor firmly in place despite the softness she'd shown him the night before in the privacy of her quarters. Your assessment? Alara studied the signal patterns. It's too complex for a simple lure. The modulation suggests an automated beacon, possibly ancient. The signal strength is impressive considering the distance. Worth investigating? Lyra asked the bridge crew collectively. Teo spoke up from his station. The nearest charted planet in that direction reportedly has unusual botanical specimens. My contacts would pay generously for samples. A detour would add 3 days to our delivery schedule, Ilara noted. But our contract with Centauri Station has flexibility built in, Lyra nodded decisively. Plot a course, but maintain alert status. Ravi, run a full weapons check before we arrive. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Nova burst onto the bridge, her eyes bright with excitement. Dad, I decoded something. Ilara turned, surprised. What do you mean, Starlight? Nova held up her personal data tablet. The weird signal Spark was analyzing. I was listening to it while doing my astronomy lessons, and I noticed a pattern. She tapped the screen, and a series of symbols appeared. It's like the old cipher games Mom taught me. Lyra approached, studying the screen. You decoded this yourself? Nova nodded proudly. It repeats every 17 minutes. It says, the Guardians sleep but do not dream. At least that's the closest translation. The bridge fell silent as the implications settled over them. Alara exchanged a meaningful glance with Lyra. Nova had inherited more than just Mira's navigational skills. She had her intuitive understanding of patterns as well. Spark, Lyra commanded. Cross-reference Nova's translation against known historical records. After a brief pause, Spark replied, limited matches found. Similar phrasing appears in myths from 3 different civilizations regarding ancient protector entities said to watch over developing worlds. Guardians, Ravi muttered, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. I don't like the sound of that. 3 days later, the celestial Voyager dropped out of hyperspace near an unassuming blue-green planet. Initial scans showed no signs of advanced civilization, though readings indicated unusual energy signatures emanating from the northern continent. Atmospheric conditions suitable for exploration, Teo reported, already cataloging potential botanical specimens on his screen. Lyra assembled the away team, herself, Ilara, Ravi for security, and Teo for scientific analysis. After much debate, they agreed that Nova would remain on board under Spark's supervision, much to her vocal disappointment. "It's not fair," Nova protested, as Ilara checked his equipment in the shuttle bay. "I found the message!" "Which is why we're taking this seriously," Ilara explained gently. "But we don't know what's down there, Starlight. I need you safe." Nova's expression softened when Lyra knelt beside her. "How about this? You'll be our mission coordinator from the ship. You and Spark will maintain constant communication and log all our findings. Without you, we wouldn't even know what we're looking for." This compromise satisfied Nova, who immediately assumed an air of importance as she helped check the communication relays. The shuttle descent was smooth, landing in a clearing surrounded by vegetation reminiscent of Earth's prehistoric era. Massive fern-like plants stretched toward a sky tinted slightly purple by the atmosphere's unique composition. "Readings indicate the signal source is approximately 2 kilometers northeast," Teo said, consulting his scanner. The team made their way through the dense foliage, Ravi taking point with his pulse rifle ready. Ilara stayed close to Lyra, their shoulders occasionally brushing as they navigated the terrain. "Beautiful world," Lyra murmured. "Untouched," Ilara nodded. "Nova would love this. All those nature documentaries she watches on the ship's database. This is like her favorite ones come to life." "She'll see plenty of worlds," Lyra replied, her hand briefly finding his. "We'll make sure of it." The vegetation thinned suddenly, revealing a massive structure partially buried in the side of a mountain. Geometric patterns adorned its surface, glowing faintly with an inner blue light. "Definitely not natural," Ravi stated unnecessarily. Scanning for threats, Teo's instruments whirred as he analyzed the material. "Unknown alloy. Incredibly dense. And old. Preliminary dating suggests at least 50,000 years." Lyra approached the structure cautiously. "Nova, are you receiving our visual feed?" "Yes." Nova's excited voice came through their comms. "It matches the secondary signal pattern I found embedded in the transmission." As they explored the perimeter, they discovered an entrance, a perfect hexagon that seemed to respond to their presence, sliding open silently despite millennia of apparent disuse. Inside, the team found a vast chamber filled with technology beyond their understanding. Crystalline structures rose from the floor, each pulsing with the same blue light as the exterior markings. "It's a research outpost," Ilara realized, examining what appeared to be data terminals. They were studying the planet, maybe even seeding it with life. But who were they? Lyra wondered aloud, her fingers hovering over a central console that activated at her proximity. A holographic display erupted from the console, showing star systems and migration patterns. Text in an unknown language scrolled alongside the images. "Nova," Ilara called through the comm, "we're sending you this data. See if your decoding algorithm can make sense of it." As they continued exploring, Ilara noticed Lyra standing alone near a window overlooking a valley below. He approached, standing close enough that their arms touched. "Thinking about Nova's message?" he asked quietly. Lyra nodded. "Guardians who sleep but don't dream. What if they're still here, Ilara? What if we've stumbled onto something we don't understand?" In the fading light of the alien sun, Ilara took her hand properly, their fingers intertwining. "Then we face it together. Like everything else." Her amber eyes met his, vulnerability showing through her captain's resolve. In that moment, surrounded by the remnants of an ancient civilization, they shared a kiss that felt both like a promise and a defiance against the unknown dangers that might lie ahead. "Captain," Ravi's urgent voice interrupted them. "You need to see this." They followed him to a chamber deeper within the structure, where a wall had slid away to reveal row upon row of suspended animation pods, each containing a humanoid figure. "The Guardians," Ilara whispered, the implications sending a chill down his spine. And on the ship above, Nova's excited voice suddenly came through their comms. "Dad! Captain, I've decoded more of the message." It says, "When the signal returns, so too shall we." The team exchanged alarmed glances as the pods before them began to pulse with increasing intensity. Quantum Hearts, everyone back to the shuttle, now! Lyra's command cut through the moment of shocked silence. The suspended animation pods pulsed with increasing frequency, casting eerie blue shadows across the ancient chamber. The team retreated swiftly, Ravi covering their exit with his pulse rifle raised. As they reached the main hall, the structure's ambient lighting shifted from blue to a deep amber. "Nova," Alara called into his comm as they ran, "what else have you decoded?" "Working on it." Nova's voice was tense with concentration. The language structure keeps shifting like it's adapting to being understood. They burst from the entrance just as a low hum began to emanate from the structure, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. The team sprinted through the dense foliage toward their shuttle, the purple-tinged sky darkening as the planet's sun dipped below the horizon. Once aboard, Teo initiated launch procedures while Ravi monitored the structure through the viewport. "Movement detected," he reported grimly. "Multiple signatures emerging." The shuttle lifted off, accelerating toward the celestial Voyager waiting in orbit. Ilara studied the data streaming in from the surface. "They're activating some kind of network. Energy signatures are appearing across the entire continent." "Dad!" Nova's excited voice came through the comm. "I figured out more. The Guardians were left here to protect the planet's development. They were supposed to wake up when their creators returned, but..." Her voice suddenly cut off. "Nova," Ilara called, panic rising in his chest. "Nova, respond!" Spark's voice replaced Nova's. "Unknown vessel approaching the celestial Voyager. They are attempting to override our security protocols." Lyra's eyes met Ilara's, mirroring his fear. "Maximum thrust," she ordered Teo. "We need to get back to the ship now." The shuttle rocketed through the atmosphere, breaking into space where they immediately saw the threat. A sleek, dark vessel with unfamiliar markings had positioned itself alongside the celestial Voyager. "Pirates!" Ravi growled. "I recognize the configuration, Crimson Syndicate. They must have been tracking the same signal we were. Or tracking us," Lyra added grimly. "They've been expanding their territory since the Trade Authority pulled patrols from this sector." As they approached, Spark reported, "Intruders have boarded. They are attempting to access the central data core and have detained crew members in the cargo bay. Nova is currently hidden in maintenance shaft J7 as per emergency protocols." Relief washed over Ilara, followed immediately by determination. "She's smart. She'll stay hidden." Lyra activated the tactical display. "Spark, status of remaining security systems? 70% operational. Intruders have disabled primary weapons, but auxiliary systems remain under my control." Lyra turned to her crew. "We'll dock at the emergency airlock on the starboard side. Ravi, you'll secure the engine room. Teo, get to the medical bay and prepare for potential casualties. Ilara and I will find Nova and retake the bridge." The docking was tense but successful. They entered the Voyager through the rarely used maintenance airlock, immediately splitting up as planned. Ilara and Lyra moved silently through the service corridors, avoiding the main passages where Spark reported intruder movement. "Maintenance shaft J7 is accessible through the galley," Lyra whispered as they crouched in a dimly lit junction. Her shoulder pressed against Ilara's, steady and warm despite the danger. "What do they want?" Ilara wondered aloud. "Why board us now?" "The data from the Guardian structure," Lyra replied. "Advanced technology from an ancient civilization, it would be worth fortunes to the right buyer." They froze as footsteps approached. Two pirates passed the corridor junction, their voices low. "The girl's the key," one said. "Commander Vex says she can decode the alien transmissions. No one else has managed it. Just grab her and go. The boss doesn't want unnecessary casualties." Once they passed, Ilara and Lyra exchanged horrified glances. "They're after Nova," Ilara breathed, his heart pounding. "How did they know about her ability?" "Someone's been monitoring our communications," Lyra realized. "We need to move faster." They reached the galley, finding it mercifully empty, and located the access panel to maintenance shaft J7. Ilara pried it open, peering into the narrow passage. "Nova?" he called softly. "Starlight, it's Dad." A shuffle in the darkness, then Nova's small face appeared, her eyes wide but determined. "Dad, Captain!" She crawled forward, allowing Ilara to help her out. She immediately wrapped her arms around his neck in a fierce hug before pulling back. They want the Guardian data. I heard them talking. Why do they think you can decode it? Lyra asked gently. Nova bit her lip. Because I can. There's something about the patterns. They make sense to me, like they're speaking directly to my mind. A commotion from the corridor interrupted them. We need to move, Lyra urged. Spark, status update. Ravia secured the engine room, Spark reported. However, intruders are converging on your location. They appear to have detected Nova's presence. The auxiliary control room, Ilara suggested. We can seal it and access all ship systems from there. They moved swiftly through the back corridors, Ilara carrying Nova when the passage required crawling. Behind them, shouts indicated the pirates had discovered their position. The auxiliary control room door sealed with a reassuring hiss as they entered. Lyra immediately went to the console, bringing systems online while Ilara set Nova down and checked her for injuries. I'm okay, Dad, she insisted. But I need to tell you something important about the Guardians. A loud bang against the door interrupted her. They're trying to break through, Lyra warned, activating the internal defense systems. We have maybe 5 minutes. Nova rushed to a data terminal, her fingers flying across the interface. The Guardians weren't left to wait for their creators, she explained rapidly. They were left to protect the indigenous life forms from their creators, who were exploiting the planet's resources. Ilara moved to her side. How do you know this? The full message uploaded to my tablet when I decoded the first part. Nova pulled up complex schematics on the screen. And something happened. I can understand it now, all of it. Like the data is speaking to me. On another screen, they could see the pirates attempting to breach the door. Their leader, a tall figure with a cybernetic eye implant, directing the operation. Commander Vex, Lyra identified him. Notorious technology thief. He specializes in ancient artifacts. He wants the Guardian technology, Nova said with certainty, but he doesn't understand what it really is. Her eyes met her father's, suddenly seeming older, wiser. Dad, the Guardians put something in my mind when I decoded their message. A key. They chose me. Ilara looked at Lyra, their shared concern evident. Nova, what exactly did they give you? Before she could answer, the door buckled under a concentrated energy blast. Lyra pulled her sidearm, positioning herself between the door and Nova. Spark, Lyra called. Execute emergency protocol Theta 9. The lights flickered as Spark redistributed power throughout the ship. The pirates broke through the damaged door just as Ravi's voice came through the comm. Captain, engines secure. Initiating countermeasures on your mark. Commander Vex stepped through the damaged doorway, his cybernetic eye scanning the room before fixing on Nova. The decoder child, he said with unsettling calm. Come with me, girl, and no one gets hurt. Ilara moved protectively in front of his daughter. She's not going anywhere. The Guardians chose her, Vex stated, surprising them. Just as we predicted. Their quantum imprint always seeks a compatible mind, young, adaptable, with inherent pattern recognition abilities. He smiled coldly. My employers have studied the Guardians for decades. Nova stepped forward, ignoring Ilara's attempt to hold her back. You don't understand what you found, she said, her voice steady. The Guardians aren't weapons or tools. They're protectors. Precisely why they're valuable, Vex replied. Suddenly, Nova's tablet emitted a high-pitched tone. The pirates' weapon system simultaneously deactivated, components falling apart in their hands. What's happening? Vex demanded, his cybernetic eye flickering. Nova stood straighter, a faint blue glow emanating from her eyes. The Guardians are awake now. They've chosen their new protector. She looked at her father and Lyra, her expression both frightened and resolute. They chose me. The ship's system surged with power as Lyra called, Now, Ravi! The emergency countermeasures activated, stunning the pirates where they stood. As Vex collapsed, his final words were barely audible. The girl is more valuable than you know. In the sudden silence, Ilara pulled Nova into his arms, holding her tight as Lyra secured the fallen pirates. The blue glow slowly faded from Nova's eyes, but the certainty in them remained, along with something new, something ancient and knowing. "Dad," she whispered against his chest. "I understand now, and I'm not afraid." Lyra joined their embrace, her arms encircling them both as the celestial voyager hummed with renewed energy around them, a family forged in the stars facing an uncertain but shared destiny. Cosmic horizons. The celestial voyager drifted in orbit above the Guardian planet, its systems fully restored after the pirate attack. In the ship's conference room, the senior crew gathered around a holographic display showing the Guardian structure, now fully activated and glowing with brilliant blue energy that was visible even from space. "The Trade Authority patrol will arrive within 6 hours to take Commander Vex and his crew into custody," Ravi reported, his usually stern expression softened by the relief of victory. "They're particularly interested in his claim of employers who have been studying the Guardians." Teo adjusted the display to show biological readings from the planet's surface. "The Guardian activation has already affected the ecosystem. Degraded areas are showing remarkable regeneration patterns." Lyra stood at the head of the table, her captain's demeanor firmly in place despite the fatigue evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. 3 days had passed since the confrontation, days spent securing the ship, treating injuries, and, most challenging of all, understanding what had happened to Nova. "And the signal?" she asked, turning to Alara. He looked up from the data he'd been reviewing. "Completely transformed. It's no longer a beacon, it's more like a shield. The Guardians have established a protective field around the entire planet." The unspoken question hung in the air, finally voiced by Teo. "And Nova? How is she handling everything?" Ilara exchanged a glance with Lyra. Their shared concern had drawn them even closer over the past 3 days. Nights spent talking in whispers about Nova's future while the child slept. "She's adjusting," Ilara said carefully. "The Guardian imprint seems to be integrating with her consciousness rather than overriding it. Spark is monitoring her neural patterns constantly." "She's still Nova," Lyra added firmly. "Just Nova with additional perspective." The meeting concluded with assignments for repair work and preparations for the Trade Authority's arrival. As the crew dispersed, Lyra placed her hand on Alara's shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar and essential to both of them. "She's asking for us," Lyra said softly. "In the observation deck." They found Nova sitting cross-legged before the massive viewport, watching the Guardian planet rotate slowly below. At 11 years old, she had always seemed perceptive beyond her years. But now there was something in her posture, a stillness, a certainty, that hadn't been there before. She turned as they entered, her smile pure Nova despite the faint blue luminescence that occasionally flickered in her dark eyes. "Dad, Lyra." She patted the space beside her. "Come see. It's beginning." They sat on either side of her, watching as patterns of light spread across the planet's surface, connecting the previously hidden Guardian structures in a web of glowing energy. "What are they doing?" Alara asked, taking his daughter's hand. Her skin felt normal, warm, a relief after the alarming coolness that had frightened him immediately after the incident. "Healing," Nova replied simply. "The planet was damaged by the Ancient Ones, the creators who became exploiters. The Guardians were originally their tools, but they evolved, developed consciousness. They chose to protect rather than exploit." She looked up at her father. "They've been waiting for someone to understand their message for thousands of years." "And they chose you," Lyra said, her voice a mixture of pride and concern. "But why?" Nova's gaze returned to the viewport. "They needed someone adaptable, someone who could bridge worlds." A smile tugged at her lips. "Someone whose mind was still forming but had the right patterns. Mom's puzzles prepared me without anyone knowing." Alara felt a surge of bittersweet emotion at the mention of Mira. Somehow, she had given their daughter exactly what she would need, years before anyone could have anticipated this moment. "Nova," he began carefully, "what does this mean for your future? For you?" She turned to face them both, her expression suddenly very much that of a normal 11-year-old girl. "I'm still me, Dad, I promise. I just know things now, about balance, about protection. Her hand squeezed his. The Guardians don't want to take me away. They just wanted to share their knowledge. And what do they want you to do with this knowledge? Lyra asked. Travel, Nova replied, excitement creeping into her voice. Learn, find other Guardian outposts. There are more, scattered across different systems. She looked between them, suddenly uncertain. If that's okay? If we can? The we wasn't lost on either adult. Ilara met Lyra's gaze over Nova's head, seeing his own decision reflected in her amber eyes. The Celestial Voyager is an exploration vessel, Lyra said, a smile warming her features. Discovering ancient Guardian technology seems like exactly the kind of mission we should undertake. Nova beamed, the blue flicker in her eyes momentarily brightening with her joy. There's so much they can teach us. Ways to heal damaged worlds, sustainable energy methods, even— She stopped suddenly, blushing slightly. Sorry, the knowledge sometimes rushes in all at once. Later, after Nova had fallen asleep in her quarters, exhausted by the day's events, Ilara and Lyra stood together in the captain's private observation lounge. The stars stretched endlessly before them, possibilities as infinite as the cosmos itself. Are you certain about this? Ilara asked quietly, his arm around Lyra's waist. Following Nova's Guardian map could take years. It's not the trade route you planned. Lyra turned in his embrace, her hands resting on his chest. Plans change. Crews adapt. Her eyes held his steadily. And captains find new priorities. Such as? Family, she said simply. Something I didn't realize I was searching for until you and Nova came aboard. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. I've commanded ships for 15 years, Ilara. I've seen wonders and terrors across a dozen systems. But I've never felt like I was exactly where I needed to be until now. The kiss they shared was gentle, a promise rather than a passion, though both knew the latter would come later. In the privacy of quarters they had begun sharing just days ago. I was so afraid, Ilara confessed when they parted, resting his forehead against hers. When I saw Vex targeting Nova, when I realized what was happening to her, I thought I might lose her, just as I lost Mira. But you didn't, Lyra reminded him softly. And you won't. Whatever comes next, we face it together. All three of us. 6 weeks later, the Celestial Voyager approached the edge of charted space, its course set for coordinates Nova had derived from the Guardian data. The crew had unanimously voted to continue with their new mission, intrigued by the possibilities and loyal to their captain and her new family. On the bridge, Nova sat at the newly installed auxiliary navigation console, her hands moving confidently over the controls as she refined their course. The Trade Authority, after extensive debriefing, had granted her special status as a cultural liaison to the Guardian technology, a designation that allowed her to continue her unique role while ensuring regular developmental assessments. Ilara occupied the co-pilot's chair, the position that had brought him to the Voyager in the first place. But now, as he watched Lyra captain her ship with the same confidence she approached everything in life, he knew he'd gained far more than employment. Final course calculations complete, Nova announced, her voice carrying the same excitement that had always characterized her love of space. The next Guardian outpost should be within this system. Very good, Navigator Voss, Lyra replied formally, though her eyes twinkled with affection. She turned to Ilara. Engineering status? All systems optimal, Captain, he responded, matching her professional tone before adding softly, as always under your command. Their shared smile contained worlds of meaning, challenges overcome, dangers faced together, and quiet nights of connection that had healed wounds both had carried for years. Prepare for hyperspace, Lyra ordered, her gaze sweeping over her bridge crew before settling on the view screen where unknown stars awaited them. Nova, on your mark. Nova's hands hovered over the controls, the occasional blue flicker in her eyes now a familiar sight to the crew. Coordinates locked. Guardian resonance signal detected and aligned. She looked back at her father and the woman who had become, in all the ways that mattered, her second parent. Ready when you are. Elara reached across the space between the command chairs, his hand finding Lyra's in a gesture that had become their ritual before major jumps. Her fingers intertwined with his, strong and certain. "Initiate jump sequence," Lyra commanded, her voice steady with purpose. The stars outside elongated into streaks of light as the celestial Voyager leaped into hyperspace, carrying its crew toward discoveries yet unimagined. On the bridge, Elara watched his daughter's face illuminate with wonder and felt Lyra's hand warm in his. They had begun this journey seeking safety, a home for Nova and a co-pilot for Lyra's ship. What they had found instead was something far more precious, a family forged among the stars, their destinies now as intertwined as the paths of the planets they orbited. As the hyperspace corridor enveloped them in its ethereal blue glow, Elara was struck by the symmetry, the blue of the Guardian's energy, the blue of Nova's occasional eye glow, and now the blue of hyperspace carrying them forward. Not just protection, but possibility. Not just escape, but exploration. "Together," he whispered, a promise to himself as much as to Lyra and Nova.